Wow, what an exciting day for markets. If you haven't been keeping tabs, then let me get you caught up to date. Let's get right into it. Hey, welcome back to Kyle's Financial News. I'm your host, Kyle, and today's date is July 17th, 2024. NVIDIA is down 6.5% today, back to sub $120 a share. Google, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, the whole Magnificent Seven basket all takes a hit today. The Dow, although the S&P 500 fell pretty sharply today, almost 70 points, the Dow closed up 200 points today, continuing on with that rally that it was having yesterday of just that absolute monster growth, largely driven by health and drug producers. Johnson & Johnson came out with a double beat earnings report today. The healthcare company share price jumped up by almost 4%, which I think helped kind of keep it afloat. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 was just continuing to slide. Now, I want to read a quote to you by Capital Economics. They explained today that some of the pressure on big tech stocks today seemed to be tied to Trump's remarks that Taiwan should pay for United States defense. And shortly after the article containing this quote was published by Bloomberg, shares of TSMC, the Taiwanese semiconductor giant, fell by 7% on the news. And we saw that kind of get spread throughout all the semiconductor companies, not just limited to Taiwan as well. Now, the other thing I'm remembering here is that the third week of July is supposed to be a little wrench in the 4% for July narrative. So we will kick back upwards next week, right? I'm not sure if this was just kind of a fluke or if some of these sayings are actually holding true for this month. If we are actually supposed to be sliding a little bit in the third week and then recovering, then we are right on track. So we will have to see if towards the end of this week, if we get a little bit of a bounce. So far at the moment, it seems to be getting mocked up to some remarks and considered unprecedented or unforecasted news events. As I've stated before, news isn't always the reason for volatility, but sometimes the excuse for volatility. And some of these tech stocks have really been making a strong run over the last couple weeks and months. Traders and retail investors will be continuing to want to take profit every couple percentage points that continues to climb. And I was a little bit hesitant to see NVIDIA potentially make a new all-time high. And it seems like maybe we have some pretty strong rejection from that being the case at the moment. So we will have to see if it makes new lows in the coming weeks, or maybe it's just somewhat range bound for the time being. GameStop also was on a pretty good tear yesterday, up over 5.5% during the session. And then overnight, it continued up to a little bit north of $29 a share. Then this morning, as soon as market opened again, it fell right back down to earth and is cooling back off in the high 27s, low 28s again. Something else I think is worth mentioning is I am recognizing that Trump is making some comments about market-related matters, even though he is not yet president again, may not be president again, at least not at this time. I'm not seeing any major pivots in market direction taking place. I just think traders are capitalizing a little bit on some profits. Trump does say that he will likely keep Jerome Powell at the head of the Federal Reserve as long as he doesn't mess anything up in the near term. And I'm not quite sure what to make of that either. I'm not sure if he's trying to suggest to Powell that, hey, you can keep your job as long as you don't lower interest rates until I'm in office. And quite frankly, I don't think Jerome Powell really cares all that much for threats towards his career or his current position. I think he is relatively dedicated to the job of fighting inflation and keeping the economy and the value of the dollar in mind. Historically, throughout his tenure in the Trump presidency and during the Biden presidency, he has relatively continued to just focus on markets and inflation. So I don't see a lot of sway in what some comments by Trump might make towards the decision of whether or not interest rates remain the same, go higher, or get lowered. I recall even while Trump was still president previously, in late 2018, 2019, that he was making comments towards Jerome Powell regarding interest rates back then, saying, you know, at first when he put him into office, he was saying, great guy, fantastic guy, wouldn't say a bad thing about him. And then when interest rates weren't quite going the way that Trump wanted them to go, he was saying things like Jerome knows better and he's hurting the economy, and just trying to kind of slander him a little bit. But he did not waver, so I continue to expect that to be the case. Building permits are up and over expectations this month. New home construction starts are up and over expectations this month. So the weather is warm, cement can be poured, homes can be built, people can be out working all day long. They're not being affected as much by cold and significant weather changes, albeit a little hot, but homes are being built, and that should over time help with the supply side issue of home availability. And then in turn, just through pure supply and demand, that should start to help a little bit more with the pricing. Netflix is reporting tomorrow after the close, so we will have to stay tuned to see what their numbers look like. Now, implied volatility on Netflix currently is calculating a 9% move up or down, so it should be some pretty good aftermarket action. Netflix did want to note that they currently have over 40 million subscribers in their ad tier, so I suspect that their advertising revenue is going to be strong. I don't know if it will beat expectations. You know, with school being out and all that stuff for the summer, I suppose that their viewership might be up and their ad revenue might be up. But at that same time, with it being summer and the sun's out and it's nice and hot, people should be all out and about, not maybe hunkering down indoors watching a bunch of Netflix shows, but we all know that's not always the case either. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing. 9 out of 10 of my viewers are still not subscribed to my channel. If you have enjoyed the content that I've been providing so far, please stay tuned for future content that I will be providing. Turn on notifications, and I will see you after market close tomorrow.